Tonight, as you may have just seen from that graphic starting the show, we must report the very sad news that a man synonymous with Notts County for over 60 years, Colin Slater, MBE, has passed away. Very sadly, the announcement has been made in the last few minutes by Notts County and the BBC. Colin passed away peacefully with his family beside him just a few hours ago. He was aged 87. He clocked up nearly 3,000 Magpies appearances and was the Notts County voice of BBC Radio Nottingham since they first started broadcasting in the 1960s until just a few years ago, before he has been succeeded by Charlie Slater. All our thoughts and prayers are with Colin and his family this evening. We'd like to hear your memories of Colin, not just about his footballing credentials with Notts County, but the huge amount of charity work he did throughout the community of Nottinghamshire, helping the homeless and the less needy. Please pay your tributes on our comments section to Colin this evening. On to other matters. We hope it's game day tomorrow. Kings Lynn at the second time of asking. And more breaking news this evening is that the National League General Manager, Mark Ives, has agreed to be interviewed on our Magpie Circle podcast. Not this evening, he has other engagements, but more details to follow. We will be interviewing him next week. If you have any questions for him, please send them on our social media channels or on the subject board tonight. Please keep the constructive. It is a very, very rare opportunity for us to be able to liaise directly with the main man at the National League. Fair play to him. They came back to me this afternoon and have agreed to do an interview with us. Did you go to Dover? What did you make of it? Let's hope we can get to Kings Lynn tomorrow. The first pitch inspection at 11 o'clock. We'll see whether there are any more needed after that. I'm joined this evening by Leigh Curtis. Leigh, your own father passed away in the run-up to Christmas. All condolences from everybody connected with the Magpie Circle and all of our flock this evening. Know it's been a very, very difficult time for you, but know your dad as well was, particularly in lockdown, was a keen follower of you while you were on the Magpie Circle. So on behalf of everyone, our condolences on behalf of the loss of your father.
No, thank you very much. I mean, it's been a desperately sad time. It's hit me particularly very hard because he was my mentor and my hero, and I can't talk about him for too long because I get choked up. But yeah, Notts County are absolutely brilliant. Sent me a beautiful bouquet of flowers and a lovely card. And yeah, everybody's been different class, and obviously tonight as well is very, very sad news about Colin Slater, who is just Mr. Notts County, was an absolute icon, synonymous with Saturday afternoons. He was absolutely amazing with me when I first came to Notts County. Introduced himself, introduced me to people. I travelled with him to games when I first arrived, and just a humble, truly exceptional gentleman. I don't think there's any other words that are better to describe him. He was just an absolute treasure. Charity work, his history and his knowledge of Notts County was unrivaled. And it's a desperately sad loss. And my heart goes out to the family, Notts County supporters, and everybody connected with the football club at losing such an icon and a legend.
Let's just read out a few of the tributes that are coming in from our flock as we speak. For those of you who missed the start of the show, it has been announced this evening, literally just minutes before we have gone live on air, that Colin Slater, MBE, has passed away, aged 87, earlier today. Paul Taylor, 23, R.I.P. Colin. Dale Pike, echoes those sentiments. Gary Wardle, hi all, condolences to all concerned with Colin Slater, a true stalwart. Chris Gosling, R.I.P. Colin, and what an amazing servant he has been to Notts County. Pythagoras, R.I.P. Colin. Duncan Comrie says, a legend, rest in peace, Colin. Kate Oliver Ramsden says, R.I.P. Colin. David Henton, R.I.P. Mr. Notts County, Colin Slater. That was indeed a moniker that he definitely earned over many decades following and supporting the club. Ian Birchinall says, R.I.P. Uncle Cole, top man and sad loss. Thoughts are with his family. David Shorter, R.I.P. Colin Slater, Mr. Notts County. Ellie Elvey, R.I.P. Colin. R.I.P. Colin echoes Max Seth. Of Keith Cook, a true Magpie legend. Very, very sad news missed by so many, including all Nottingham Forest fans. R.I.P. Colin. K9 Muirs, R.I.P. Uncle Colin. Chris Gosling says massive condolences to Leigh. Ellie Elvey also. Ian Birchinall as well. Cyprus Ref says prayers for both families. Dale Pikett, condolences Leigh. Keith Locke, R.I.P. Colin, true legend. Duncan Comrie, sorry for your sad loss, Leigh. Paul Hawksworth, I knew Colin well. He lodged and these are some of the little insights that you get on shows like these. So from Paul Hawksworth, I knew Colin well. He lodged in the same house as my dad when he first came to Nottingham. Once I'd introduced myself to him, the kindness he extended to me was extensive, taking me to many away games. And he adds, R.I.P. Colin, an absolute gentleman and a legend. Ellie Elvey, I think we should do a minute's silence for him if the game goes ahead tomorrow. I'm sure I've had the statement from Nick at the club that there will absolutely be a minute silence, black armbands and an appropriate tribute. Whether that will be reserved for the home game against Eastleigh FA Trophy Saturday, we shall wait and see. David Clarkson, so sorry on the news. Legend of a broadcaster from Derby fan David. Aaron Porter, Uncle Colin, R.I.P. Colin. Notts County ran through his blood. He will forever run through the heart of the fans. Nick G, R.I.P. Colin, the voice of Notts County. I'm sure he will be looking down at us. We should honour his passing on Saturday. Chris Jordan, for more than one generation, Uncle Colin was the voice of Notts County. He was a remarkable fount of Magpie's knowledge, a highly respected and award-winning broadcaster, and a genuinely good man. Chris Jordan, without Uncle Colin, we may not even have a club today. Chris Jordan, very sorry to hear of your loss too, Leigh. Kelvin Hallam, condolences to close friends and family of Colin. Hope we do a tribute as a club on Saturday. Carl Hall, R.I.P. Colin, such a legend, Mr. Notts County. He was such a gentleman, and prayers for his family. Z.O. Colin was a Notts legend, up there with Jimmy himself. Condolences to all that knew him, R.I.P. David Shorter, condolences, Leigh, on your loss. Stay strong. That literally is in the first 8 minutes of the announcement and the start of the programme. Everybody wishing to pay their respects, indicative of the true legend that was Colin Slater. I mean, I grew up as a young lad in the 60s and 70s. Colin Slater doing the radio commentaries. I was fortunate enough to get to know him from my very, very early days, starting off in journalism at the age of 18 and 19. And I think, as you mentioned there, Leigh, always very, very, very generous with his time. Took his journalistic profession very, very, very seriously. His love for Notts County was immense, but he never let that cloud his journalistic judgment. You know, if he thought there was something to hold to account, or if he thought he was chasing a story that maybe the club didn't want, he would show his journalistic credentials. He started out as a journalist in Bradford in the very, very early days. He used to tell me about his early career before coming to the original owners of the Nottingham Post, Leigh. Fantastic love for Notts County, but a great journalist as well.
Yeah, and brilliant at his job. An incredible broadcast voice, font of knowledge, was not afraid to ask the tough questions. And I think from certainly in the managers that have been at Notts in the time that I've covered, there was a lot of affection and respect for him, and that is he was widely respected and loved by all Notts fans. Just an exceptional journalist and commentator. I mean, I used to love listening to his stories on the way down to games in the car. He used to drive a bit fast, but yeah, he's. I used to travel with Colin and Dean Yates, and I did a couple of games with when Dean Yates left and Mark Stoddard took over. Then I travelled down with them to Newport, I think it was. There's a picture of all three of us after the game at Rodney Parade, and yeah, it would just be such a huge miss. Just a fantastic gentleman. I think the work that he did off the pitch in terms of helping the club through charity work, just astounding. And he was obviously a regular at our Nottingham Post Sports Awards, and nothing was ever too much trouble for him. Nothing. Anything that you wanted Colin or you asked him to do, he never said no. And that sums him up. He was just a remarkable fella.
Yes, he was awarded an MBE, which I know he was immensely proud of. Not necessarily for his commitment to watching nearly 3,000 games at Notts County, which probably deserves an MBE, probably deserves a knighthood if Tony Blair's got one, to be fair. But his work in the community was very, very well connected, very well respected. He was a trustee of a large array over the decades of charitable organisations. I know he did an awful lot of work with Emmanuel House over the years. He was heavily involved with the Notts County football in the community, latterly now the Notts County Foundation as well. And it always used to surprise me in later life, and I'm going back probably 10 years or so now, and we would always have like a lunch in the closed season. And we would look back on the previous season and look ahead to the next season and say, hopefully things are going to be a bit better. And so Colin would always ring me, right, and organise. And this is by this time he's in his mid to late 70s. So I'll say, Colin, look, I'll work around you. You tell me the time and the place. And he'd go, I can do 3 weeks on Thursday at 12:30. For an hour and a half, Paul. That's my first available opportunity. And I think to myself, he's winding down and looking through his diary. There are lunches, dinners, literally mapped out. His work ethic was far greater than mine. And I'm not going to say yours, Leigh, but that is a guy who was about 77, 78.
Yeah, his storytelling and he was a great raconteur. And some of the stories that he used to tell us about the Jimmy Cyril era and his time in journalism, particularly when he was starting out at Bradford, were absolutely brilliant. Would in the long journeys that we did in the early part when I first came to Notts, the journeys would just fly by because Colin would just talk and he would have these amazing stories, great sense of humour too. And yeah, I loved him. I will never forget what he did for me when I first came to the club, because it's important, you want to get to know that sometimes you're just left to your own devices, but Colin made a point of coming to me, sort of introducing me to people, giving me all the ins and outs of what had been going on. And he was just a lovely, warm, humble, fantastic gentleman. He was brilliant. He was an absolute legend. And yeah, he always had a full diary. I remember going to see him a few times early on. I used to drive to his house in Nottingham, and then I'd get in the car, and then we go from there. And the amount of work that he did, like you say, you could never pin him down to dates. But he was so incredibly organised as well. Fully aware of it. So yeah, he was just a fantastic journalist, and I know he will be such a big miss. I saw him recently actually at a game. I can't remember what it was. I think it was around November time, and he was just getting into touch. I said hello to him, and he was just his normal self. How are you? How are the family, etc. It's just a wonderful gentleman.
The club have released a statement, a few snippets from that. Chief Executive Jason Turner says everybody at Meadow Lane is heartbroken to have lost not only an iconic figure in the club's history, but also a great friend. As everyone knows, Colin was staunchly passionate about many things, not least Notts County, and he was an inspirational figure to be around. Naturally, he will be best remembered for his commentary work, to which he dedicated such a huge part of his amazing life. But he did so many other things for the club, which must never be forgotten. They include playing a pivotal role in securing crucial investment for the club when it was on the verge of extinction in 1965, being instrumental in the formation of Lifeline, acting as a trustee of our foundation, and becoming chairman of our former Players Association. Also, as when I heard the news in our little Magpie Circle studio, I just looked up at my bookshelf, and of course, this was Colin's book, appropriately called "Tied Up with Knots," and I'd just gone into the foreword, and of course, this was written 10, 11 years ago. I think this was the early days of the Ray True era. But there's just a couple of little things I wanted to read out from his kind of introduction that I think still hold very appropriate today. And I'll read a little bit as follows. Inevitably, over such a long period, there have been personal landmarks along the way. The first was in February 1989, when I completed 1,000 Notts games on radio. So that's 1989. I don't even, you were probably born then, Leigh. Colin has already racked up 1,000 Notts games on radio by 1989. 18 years on, in November 2007, I reached the 2,000 milestone. On both occasions, I was honoured to receive various presentations, which I treasure. Just of a little bit. There was, of course, life before broadcasting on Nottingham's newspapers, so that the beginning of the 2009-2010 season, that was Munto, marked my 50th year at Meadow Lane. On the very anniversary of my first match on the 22nd of August, before a home game against Dagenham, the then chairman Peter Trembling presented me with a large cake, beautifully decorated, which I later, and this kind of sums up the man, which I later took to a children's ward at the Queen's Medical Centre in the hope of cheering up some very sick youngsters. You come away from such a visit deeply moved by the dedication of nurses and other staff, and humbly counting your blessings. The club later organised a gala dinner in my honour, and 12th of November 2009 is a night I shall always hold dear in my memories, not really for the over-generous things that were said, but for being surrounded by family and friends, from among whom I will mention just 5. We won't mention those names just now. I don't want to single anyone out. And here's a final little bit, which I think is actually very accurate. While crystallizing my experiences and memories into a single volume, 2 things have become much clearer. One is that the most important decisions ever taken by a board of directors is who to appoint as manager. When Notts have got it right, success has inevitably followed. When they've got it seriously wrong, which is too often, I fear, the result has been catastrophic. The second reflection is how often over the past half-century, Notts have only been free of sometimes desperate financial problems in the years when Jack Dunnett and Derek Pavis were chairman, using their wealth to drive Notts forward. Just a few very short clips from Colin's book. I'm sure most of you have got that. Whether that will be going into print or be on sale in the club shop, if there are any copies still available, I don't know, but it's a great read. More comments online. Chris Jordan, RIP Colin is trending on Twitter, shows how much he was loved and respected. The big picture people will never forget his commentary on the Chelsea promotion game, an absolute legend of our club. Ian Greasby, RIP Colin Slater, a true Notts legend. Nick G, I'm sure the club and fans will all want to pay their respects. Our thoughts are with his family at this time. Nick G, we should do a montage of his commentary and play it during a minute's silence. Brings a tear to my eye. And the big picture, Pickett Yeah, big picture people. Picking up on your point, Leigh, I fondly remember Mark Stallard's stories of Colin's driving to away games on previous episodes. And I think Les Brad has also spoken about this. I don't know. I didn't go travel with Colin too much, which may well have been a little bit of a blessing. But I'm told Les tells a lovely story. I don't know whether he still had them when you were in the car, Leigh, but you know how you can get all those gizmos that predict radar traps and speed cameras. Well, Les tells a wonderful story that there's about 6 of these gizmos all lined up on the dashboard. And all these things keep beeping every quarter of a mile to say there's a speed trap coming up, a radar trap, speed camera, you name it. Because even in his 80s, Colin used to do the after dinner speaking, you know. He'd travel up to Barnsley or Sheffield or Bradford and do an after dinner gig. I mean, it was quite remarkable how much energy he had and was never, ever not on the go.
Yeah, he was. I never saw all the gizmos in his car, but I remember the sweets that he used to have. He used to keep in the dashboard. Yeah, he was always well stocked with those. But yeah, tremendous dedication, great professional, and he never slowed down, did he? I mean, this was just what a remarkable life as well. And when you think about it, you know what he's witnessed during that time and what Notts County have achieved, the highs, the lows, and he got to chronicle everything during that time. And he was synonymous, you know, Saturday afternoons were absolutely synonymous with, you know, Colin was synonymous with Saturday afternoons, wasn't he? His voice was so recognisable. And just the stories that he amassed along the way, the work he did off the field. Just a great, fantastic journalist. And I think those experiences, and if there are any young journalists watching this, you know, he is somebody that you would look up to, somebody who carries a great amount of respect, and did both sides, did print and broadcast. So, you know, just what a tremendous career,
Such a sad loss, but I'm sure in the coming days there will be many tributes to Colin, and I know that the club are working on something appropriate for the coming game. The sad loss today, literally just as we were before the start of this show, that Colin Slater, Mr. Notts County, MBE, has passed away today at the age of 87. Rest in peace, Colin. Let us move on. There is an awful lot happening at Notts County other than on the pitch, where we seem to be having a few problems getting games on, or our opposition appear to be having a few problems. Dover, second successive debacle. Did you have any inkling, Leigh, of this? Because it's one thing for a game to be postponed in bad weather. There is always an element of risk. But it's another in terms of a lack of communication, which clearly there wasn't with Kings Lynn. And it would appear there certainly wasn't with Dover, based on the statement that Notts issued. Like many others, did you get all the way down there?
Yes, I did, and then I turned back round fairly sharpish.
Did you actually get to the ground? Did you pull up at the gates?
I literally, yeah, I wasn't far away, literally, and then I got a phone call from Nick to say you might as well not bother turning up or parking up. Just get yourself off the game. You know, game's been and done. The ref said the pitch is unplayable. I think driving down, I did worry because it absolutely pelted it down. I left Lincoln at around about 9:30, and it absolutely, you know, the showers were so heavy down the M25, across the Dartford crossing, and then I think it was the M2 where it came off. And I worried then. I thought, I don't think this game is going to have much of a chance, because I remember, if you recall, Dover's pitch when Notts played them, when Neil was here, he wasn't best pleased with the pitch, if you recall, when we played them last time. I think we lost 1-0.
Yeah, the opening game, and it was
I think it was the opening game,
yeah,
and
and it's very long grass, wasn't it, or something?
yeah, I don't think we have to bear in mind these pitches at some of these clubs. It's not like a Notts County, a Wrexham, a Stockport, where it's full time and you have all the appropriate people to look after it and make them look like snooker tables. So I did worry on the way down, but even then, I kind of thought that the protocol should be that if you have a doubt about the game or you're not sure, get a local referee in. By that time, Notts fans would have set off. Notts fans were already in Dover. Some had even booked overnight stays and had checked into their hotels. And it's such an expensive journey to get all that way and not have any form of communication. It was pretty dreadful, to be honest. And I understand why so many fans have got angry about it, because people are giving up time, and it's not just time, it's money. It's an expensive journey. It's a 400-mile round trip. And I'm a little bit flabbergasted, to be honest, that this decision or somebody wasn't drafted in earlier to take a look, because by all accounts, the ball wouldn't bounce. So that tells you instantly that no referee in his right mind is ever going to let a game go ahead where the ball doesn't bounce, and players' health and safety is absolutely paramount in those instances. A bit similar to like Kings Lynn, and again, I remember the night before it absolutely hammered down. I said to my wife, I said, I don't hold out much hope of this game going ahead, to be honest. And I obviously got there at 1 o'clock, and then it was obviously called off at 2. But there just needs to be some kind of protocol in place. And I always thought that if there was any doubt about a pitch, a local ref would come in, because obviously the match referees don't usually get to a ground until about 12:30, 1 o'clock. So, very, very disappointed, very frustrating. Certainly empathise with Ian and the players about the fact that they are in the thick of a promotion race, and now they're having to condense these games into a short time frame, when others don't have that problem. And I want to say it's not really an even playing field, is it? Because if Chesterfield or the sides above them are playing once a week, and you've got Notts who have got to get 4 or 5 games in a short space of time, you've got to think about players' recovery, fitness, COVID. So I was really, really disappointed. And it's such an expensive journey. And I felt really sorry for the supporters, because, they're the ones who invest the time. They're the ones who invest the money. They're the ones who give up their afternoons potentially with their families because they love Notts County through and through, and want to travel everywhere across the country to go and watch their beloved team. And they get shortchanged pretty much in instances like this. They don't get refunds. They won't get their hotel money back, and it's a pretty sorry state of affairs, really.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to drill down into when I speak with Mark Ives later this week is I want to understand exactly what rules there are and there aren't on a match day in relation to postponement, because it would seem pretty clear to me that you have 2 of the smaller clubs who are desperate for the game to go ahead because they need the revenue. The Kings Lynn chairman and the Dover chairman have both come out with the same, well, the pitch looked all right to me. We thought it was fine, but it's an inexperienced ref, or the ref thinks. So what they've actually done, they've booted the responsibility straight on to the ref. And I think that's very unfair. Is there a rule that says if there is any possibility of the game being postponed, you must have a pitch inspection? You must have a pitch inspection at 9 or 10 or 11, which can be governed by how far the away team's fans are travelling. So in the case of Dover, that pitch inspection needs to be done at 9 in the morning. Now, I've had some debate on social media with people I believe would be referees, and they say, well, they're only part-time referees. They don't get paid a lot, so you can't expect them to travel to games earlier. So either the club has to have a local ref inspect it and announce we've had a precautionary pitch inspection at 10 o'clock. The pitch is currently playable. Yeah, we are getting the match referee to come in later. Bang, issue that statement. Then people travelling make a judgment call. They make a judgment call on whether they want to go or whether they don't. And the other thing I'm going to put to Mark Ives is, why not make referees for the National League, National Division, fully professional? 90% of the refs in this league want to go into the Football League anyway. So start paying them. Make them professional, and they travel overnight the night before. Yeah, if it's needed. Clearly in April, yeah, when it's lovely sunny weather, but in the winter months, any issues? We all knew Dover it was going to be wet. That ref travels down Friday night. He can have a look Friday afternoon, because I'm pretty sure that the Kings Lynn pitch would have failed on Christmas Day. I'm pretty sure Dover's pitch would have failed on Friday afternoon. But the clubs are kind of working out what to do to maximise revenues. So they're not going to make efficient decisions. And if people say, well, the National League can't afford to pay professional referees or whatever it is, well, they are the official feeder league to the Football League, right? You've now got 90% of all the clubs in the National League, National Division. I'm not talking North and South here. They're full time. You know, how many clubs in this league have got a salary budget for players of in excess of 2 million? Be 5 or 6, right? And here we are saying, you know, Fred Smith's going to travel from the Wiltshire FA. Yeah, he can't get down there before 1 o'clock, right? Because he's doing his postman's job or whatever it is, or he was working the night shift at Plessy. Yeah, so he gets there as quickly as he can, and he's responsible for deciding whether a game goes ahead when he's in charge of players, in some cases on £4,000 a week, £5,000 a week, £6,000 a week. Yeah, how the National League should be levelling up, not levelling down. And the more Fred Carno circus you have, the more it's going to reflect badly ultimately on the National League. And this is kind of what I want to get to the bottom of with Mark Ives. Is there a rule that I suspect there isn't? So the clubs can do what the hell they want on the morning of a game, regards of pitch inspection. If not so to be believed, and we certainly would believe them, let alone communicating with supporters, they don't even communicate with the other club. Surely that's a fine. That should be on the National League rule book that says failure to communicate, game in doubt, £1,000 fine. Guarantee you they'd put a call in then. Guaranteed. Whereas it appears to be a personal fiefdom of Jim Parmenter at Dover and at Stephen Cleeve at Kings Lynn. Kings Lynn called their game off again, didn't they? Woking.
Yeah.
That did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was on the way back from Dover. I got to know the M25 and the Dartford crossing like the back of my hand. But I mean, we're talking about the National League having some farcical postponements. Obviously, Colchester played Rochdale, didn't they? Well, were supposed to play Rochdale on Saturday, and their game got called off at 2:30. So you'd imagine that Colchester fans were already in the ground or, you know, waiting for the game to kick off. And again, how has that situation been allowed to develop? Because that is the Football League. You know, there was surface water on the pitch. Why is it taken that long? When, as we've discussed, you could have a local referee in at 11:30 and just say, look, there's too much standing water off the pitch. You've got too much work to do. The ground staff got too much work to do to get this in order before the referee comes to make a decision, because Colchester are obviously travelling a long way from Essex to obviously near Manchester. So, you know, we're talking about Kings Lynn and Dover, but it doesn't it doesn't seem to be that much better in the Football League, judging by the Colchester postponement. And yet, as we've just said, that, you know, the biggest losers in all this are the supporters. So I would be interested to find out, you know, what is the exact protocol. I mean, Jim Parmenter said he felt the pitch was playable, but it's all right saying that. But he's not a match referee. you know, it's like me. I could take a look at it and go, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, fine. But you've got to take
Jim
into account
Parmenter, the owner of
yeah.
the home club, cannot make an independent assessment of that game.
He's not a referee. He's not a referee. So, and the referee has got to take into account the health and safety of the players. I'm pretty sure Jim Parmenter would be the first one to moan is if a 50-50 challenge, a ball gets stuck in the mud and one of his players gets seriously injured. And that's what you're dealing with. You know, we've got to take that into account. So it's all right saying, yeah, the pitch looked fine. It was playable in our point of view. Oh, the referee was inexperienced. Forget the referee. He's there. He's the independent. He's got to take into account both teams, the players. And we forget about this, you know, because it's they're the ones putting their bodies on the line. You know, what happens if your foot gets stuck on the pitch, someone comes in for a tackle, you get a broken leg? I mean, those things can happen on bad pitches. We've seen it happen before. So I absolutely apportion no blame to the referee whatsoever. He has to take an independent decision. And I know for a fact that Notts agreed with the referee's decision, had no problem with the referee's decision whatsoever. I think the biggest problem was the lack of communication and lack of information, which, for whatever reason, was not really forthcoming until the game was called off. And that isn't good enough. And, you know, there needs to be an apology, really, certainly to the Notts fans who'd travelled all that way and had spent a lot of money on petrol or had set off on buses. Because I remember looking at my Twitter feed early in the morning, and I think one of the supporters coaches had set off at around about 8 o'clock in the morning. And that's a hell of a long way. You know, who's going to say sorry to them? Who's going to apologise to them for the time that they've wasted, or, you know, the time that they may have taken off work to get to a game? Yeah, it's not good enough, really.
To be fair to clubs, because obviously, you know, I've worked in pro football on the other side of the fence. Yeah, so this is not just fans emotionally ranting. You'll never deliver a 100% solution, because if there is a monsoon downpour at 1:30, then a pitch that was perfectly playable can be unplayable by 3 o'clock. You know, and if you think back to the Notts County pre-season game against AEK Athens in the summer, in the end of July, first week of August, red hot, storm cloud, thunderstorm, literally stopped over Meadow Lane, and it just poured down for 40 minutes, and the pitch was flooded. Pitch was fine at the start of the game. It was flooded in 40 minutes, and the ball didn't move. The game's off. So you can never 100% eradicate these. You will always get some instances. But I think if we're being honest and look on the face of it at both Kings Lynn and Dover, neither of these fall into a category of a monsoon, right, emptying over the grounds in the last hour before the game, which is kind of what the narrative that those two respective chairmen are trying to suggest. You know, I would respectfully suggest neither of these games had a prayer, but there wasn't one single word from either chairman to indicate there may be a doubt. Not it was definitely going to be off, but there may be a doubt, and we are calling in the referee, yeah, as a precautionary inspection. That precautionary inspection will take place at 9 or 10, yeah, and then if it's passed, but it might be off. To me, the way Notts are doing it, or the way both teams are doing it tomorrow, and, you know, without speaking out of school here, I believe that Notts have had to turn the thumb screws on a few people, let's just leave it at that, to get a pitch inspection at 11 tomorrow and announce there's a pitch inspection at 11 and have a referee and have the match referee there for 11. And even then, Kings Lynn add the rider and the caveat. Kings Lynn are very confident this game will be taking place. I'm not sure how they can be very confident the game's taking place, because we've got a ready pitch inspection. You know, they might be optimistic or whatever, but clearly they don't want to lose gate monies. But I think the way it's being done tomorrow is how it should be done. Why isn't that written in to the National League rulebook? sanctionable by fines. Sanctionable by fines. And if there is a huge, massive downpour at 6 o'clock, there's nothing you can do about that. And I think people would respect you for that. But you've got to communicate a lot more. And at the minute, clubs left to their own devices will always manipulate, try to manipulate something to their advantage. You know, Crystal Palace, the Premier League, over Christmas, Patrick Vieira, their manager, got COVID, didn't he? And so Crystal Palace sought a postponement with COVID. The Premier League obviously smelt a bit of a rat and refused to sanction the postponement. Crystal Palace played that game with every single one of the same players that they played a few days earlier, bar one. They made one change for that team. I would suggest Palace didn't want to play the game because the manager couldn't be in the dugout, you know. So you have to accept that clubs will manipulate. It's down to the league to get the clubs by the scruff of the neck and say, actually, you've got to do that, you've got to do that, you've got to do that. And I think the National League are a long way behind the curve. And whereas before you would have, they're probably not bothered about Woking travelling anywhere because there's only 87 Woking fans. I'm not being disrespectful, but it's very small numbers. When Notts travel, when Wrexham travel, when Stockport travel, you know, you're talking anywhere between 500 to 2,000 people going. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people to be inconvenienced who clearly are going to make a big noise.
Yeah, and it's just common sense, really, and a duty of care. You know, obviously, not just to your own supporters, like the Kings Lynn supporters or the Dover supporters, but also those travelling. Like we just said, you know, people investing their time and their money. You know, they deserve to be kept in the loop, so they can make an informed decision. Because, you know, the sooner you have a pitch inspection, like say, if a local referee comes in at 9 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, for instance, for Kings Lynn, at least the fans are informed and are kept well abreast of everything that's going on. To call a game off an hour before.
Why not take it outside of in Leigh? But you know, when they're doing the pitch inspection, right? Social media, video cameras, take photos, take pictures.
Yeah.
You know, what I can't, for the life of me, understand in this world of instant communication, because I don't know what Dover's pitch looked like Saturday, right? Most of us don't. We've seen a few pictures from an angle. If a ref is really worried, sorry, it's not the ref's fault. So the ref will say the game can't go ahead for a certain reason. It may well be 80% of the pitch is great, but there might be a 15-yard square that's a complete bog. Yeah? Take some photos of it. Put them online. This is the reason I've postponed the game. You know, because was it you telling me? Someone told me that Nicky Southall, the Dover assistant manager, has kind of totally contradicted.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Armenter's quite disgraceful interview. Didn't apologise to Notts, just embittered, blamed an inexperienced ref. And yet Nicky Southall, the assistant manager who's played the game, basically has come out and said the ball didn't bounce, it didn't roll, etc. Well, you know.
Yeah, it's crackers, really. All fun and games. I mean, obviously that as well is Notts have got to go there on a Tuesday night, which is a hell of a long trip to make on a Tuesday.
We'll be there. Don't worry. We'll be there.
We'll be there. But you know, it's like you say, Jim Parmiter's saying, well, it's an experienced referee. The pitch looked fine to us, but then you've got Nicky Southall there, who's obviously played the game, knows what's at stakes for players in terms of their careers, and is there any hazards there that could put them in any danger. You got to take the lead from the referee, and then certainly listen to the people who've played and know the game, who sort of appreciate what these pitches can do to players, and the hazards that they can cause. You know, and yeah, it was baffling, really, the lack of communication, and Notts were understandably very unhappy about it, and rightly so, because that's 2 games now that they've lost. I mean, I don't know whether Notts even get a refund for their hotel, because obviously they went down on the Friday night, didn't they? So who reimburses them? Is there anything in the National League to say that you get your hotel refunded? I'm not sure. It's all nothing's ever clear, is it? Unfortunately.
Well, I am looking forward to speaking to Mark, because they have, as you would know, just so the rest of the people know, the National League have today appointed a new media officer. So we will be interested. Hey, let's just say, Leigh, he's got his work cut out. He's got his work cut out, and at least he started from the bottom rung. So if he gets any improvement, he could look quite good. He could look quite good, to be fair, because whatever the National League do at the minute, communications, I would respectfully suggest, isn't a long way up the ladder for them. Some more comments here. Chris Gosling: Kings Lynn's pitch is looked after by the council, which means it's the same level as care as a Sunday pub league. The NL should expect better standards than that at step 1 level. And there's always a big debate about this groundsman, isn't there? I don't 100% know the ins and outs, but alleges and counterclaims that he'd not been paid, he left, so therefore I don't fully understand it. The only thing I would say in partial defence of Stephen Cleeve, because it was just over a year ago, he came on our show, and to be fair, he spoke pretty well, I have to say. I think he's now finding out that running a professional club, running a 5th tier football club, you open yourself to a lot of abuse, and you don't need to make too many mistakes dealing with fans to put yourselves in a world of hurt. And I think that is what he's going through. To be fair to him, and I've heard this, several fans have said this to me, he did spend money on installing a new drainage system. But one of the problems is that the ground is very, very low level. And whether the drainage system manages to get rid of the standing water 100% is a debatable point. It's a debatable point. He did actually say on this show a year ago that they were and had been looking at a Deso pitch, which would clearly eradicate the principal levels of problems that they've got. But his complete lack of communication and the way he went about it, and whether he's still got a groundsman or not, kind of undermines his argument an awful lot, and clearly is one of the reasons he's getting such a bad press at the minute. Conspiracy theories always abound, Leigh, in these, don't they? So please do not take this as gospel, okay? Tim Allsop, I hesitate to read it out, but I will, because it's a good one in the sense of conspiracy theories. Tim Allsop says, I spoke to a friend of mine today who went on Saturday. He chatted to the person who supplies the catering for Dover, as you do, obviously. He knew the game was going to be off as the catering was cancelled on Friday. Now, I'm not saying that is true, but, as conspiracy gossip stories go, it's up there, that one, isn't it? Gary Wardle, does anyone know who is on the National League board? I will be able to report that back to you after my interview with Mark Ives. Duncan Comrie, another conspiracy theory. The owners of both clubs were possibly hoping for a start to the games, then get them abandoned. Of course, then you still get to keep the ticket monies, don't you? I guess is the point of that. Chris Gosling, Dover and Kings Lynn probably hoping for a few more postponements to push for a vote to null and void the season. Ellie Elvey, I've been told the groundsman at Kings Lynn hadn't been paid for 4 months, therefore said until he got paid, he wouldn't look after the pitch, and was sat in a pub talking to our fans when an inspection was needed. I heard that one as well. Yeah, it may well be true. Andy Walton, on pitch inspection, there should be a ruling to inspect at least 60 minutes prior to fans setting off. Okay, that sort of kind of brings us up to there. Okay, so we've done pitches, postponements, more to report in a special show later this week when we have had a chat with Mark Ives. And as I said earlier, if there are any specific queries you've got, drop me a line and I'll do my best to get specific answers. No rants, please. No, the National League is a joke league, blah. That probably won't mean that my interview with Mark Ives lasts very long, but constructive points, please. Let's talk about on the pitch, Leigh. on the pitch. Jaden Richardson loan extended. Let's start with Zach Brunt coming in from Sheffield United. What do we think of that? And one of the interesting points, I guess, is Zach was getting first team football at Southend, spoke about how much he wanted to taste the other side of the coin in the National League top end, going for it. A lot of points are put into loan agreements now. Are you expecting Zach Brunt to be playing regular?
Yes. Not just because of any deal that Notts may have or whatever stipulations Sheffield United may have on Zach Brunt, but I think he is a tremendous signing. I watched him play for Southend against Grimsby, which I think was a game on BT Sport, and he was fabulous. Such a technically gifted footballer. He's not blessed with great pace, but good feet, sees a pass, and I think slots perfectly into the way that Ian Birchnell has got Notts County playing. I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the team. I do think he will bring an added dimension. Sheffield United have got huge hopes for him. I think he's already played twice for their first team this season. I know I think they were both in the League Cup. Great lad to talk to as well. He did a terrific interview with us all last week about his football upbringing, and I like him because he's a bit of a maverick. You know, he when he spoke to us, he was talking about coming up through the academy system, and obviously he was at Manchester City, Aston Villa, and then he took the decision to go to Spain. And it's interesting, you know, a lot of people I mean, I've spoke to players before about the academy system in England, and it's funny because a lot of them, when you ask them about it, they're not actually that keen on it because the football is very, very rigid. It is, you know, pass. And you all learn, it doesn't really coach individuals. And Zach pretty much admitted that was why he left England to go to Spain, because he wanted to do his own thing. So, you know, they didn't teach you game management, didn't teach you to be an individual. You're not allowed to showcase your own flair. So obviously he went to Spain. I think there was some reason he couldn't sign, but obviously he trained with Atletico Madrid and played, I think, with Guti's son, who was obviously a Real Madrid legend. So fantastic backstory behind him. But clearly a player who is blessed with an incredible amount of talent. I think it's a tremendous signing. I think it's a statement of intent by the owners, because I think they probably appreciate that Notts have got themselves into a fantastic position, not very far behind the leaders, Chesterfield. Have done remarkably well against the sides who are up there challenging for promotion. Haven't lost many or if hardly any against those sides who are challenging. And I believe they've got a fantastic chance of getting promotion to the Football League. And I think you need to strengthen at the right times. I think it sends out a message. And it's the same with Jaden Richardson. Great loan signing. And I think with Patson coming back, with Richardson in the team, obviously Zach Brunt, I think Notts are actually have, and they had this for a while under Sean Derry when we obviously had Grealish and McGregor, that they are developing a reputation now where I think teams, certainly from the Championship, and maybe if they want to try their hand in the Premier League, are quite happy to send to Notts County because they're getting game times. It's a fantastic stadium. It's a great set. Got their own training pitch. Got a good coach. Fantastic coach, in fact. And they have a great chance of achieving something. I think, why wouldn't you want to send your players to Notts County when they're in this terrific position to learn and be part of something that means a great deal on a Saturday afternoon, not only to the squad and the football club, but the supporters. And I think you learn so much as a young player from being involved in those situations. So I think, kudos to Notts County in terms of the way they have looked after these loan players that they've brought in, the reputation they've developed them for themselves. And I'm hugely excited to see what Zach Brunt brings to the team and the competition for places, in fact, that it will bring, because I think the better competition you have for places, the more lively, the more vibrant that competition makes you on the pitch on a Saturday.
I think no one can deny that Notts' midfield front line, the competition for places is massive, hugely intense. I guess the next question for you is, do you think Ian is happy to have this many quality players competing for a limited number of spots? Or do you think there may be some departures, given its January transfer window? And of course, there's also then. Let's just deal with that one first. Then we can come on to because obviously there's a story behind the story with Cal Roberts and Chesterfield, and several of our flock are asking you about that. So we'll come to that in a minute. Do you think we're going to not shed any players? And clearly, Ruben will be one, Cal will be another, potentially, on face of it. Do you think we're going to go with the number of players that we've got now, or do you think there may be some departures?
Well, if I'm Ian Birchnell, I'm pretty sure Ian Birchnell will be the same. You're close in the promotion race. You're chasing down the leaders. You're not far behind them. You've got a fixture backlog that you've got to get through, so you're going to have a lot of games in a short space of time. Obviously, you play tomorrow night, Saturday, in the FA Trophy. You're still in with a good shout of going far in that competition. If I'm him, and if it was me in charge of Notts County, I wouldn't want to lose anybody, because I think it's a squad game. And as we've seen at the very, very elite level, it is a squad game. The better your squad, and the higher caliber, high number of caliber players you've got in there, it makes negotiating these games a lot easier. You look at Manchester City, for instance, who have taken it to a completely different level, and we're taking it to the extreme. Their squad, they've got £80 million players sitting on the bench, but they don't lose many games because their squad's so good. And I think this is I kind of think that this is what Notts have got to try to do now, because they're in a fantastic position. They've really got to go for it in the second half of the season. They were brilliant against Wrexham. And for me and Birchnell, I think the owners are doing exactly the right thing. They're bringing in the higher caliber players like your Richardsons, your Zach Brunts, and they've still got those who are brilliant in the squad, such as your Cal Roberts, your Ruben Rodriguez. I think it would have to be an astronomical bid for Notts to sell either Roberts or Rodriguez. Carl Wotton's a little bit different because his contract's obviously coming up. He's out of contract, at the end of the summer. So I think that one's a little bit different. But yeah, I think with all those players involved, great players as well, I don't think, and Notts' owners pretty much said this in a statement, it would have to significantly benefit, and this is why I don't think Callum Roberts will go to Chesterfield, by the way. It would have to significantly benefit the football club's ambitions, and I can't see how selling one of your key players, unless it is for a huge sum of money and possibly getting a good player in return, that it would make any sense to lose anybody at this stage of the season.
Where were Chesterfield coming from with Cal Roberts? I believe there was a bid.
Yep, there was.
Is it rabble rousing? Do they entertain a thought they can get the player? Because for the life of me, Liverpool will never loan a player to Manchester United or those sorts of things. Why, when Notts and Chesterfield are vying for the same spot, and then if they don't get that spot, playoffs, would you countenance that transfer from Cal to Chesterfield?
Yeah, there was a bid from Chesterfield, but I've been told categorically that he is not for sale to any other National League club. So Chesterfield, it just would not happen. I mean, what message would it send out? You know, if from a Notts County perspective, what message would that send out? You are 4 or 5 points behind the leaders at the top. You've got a great chance of promotion, and you go and sell one of your best players to the side that you're trying. I mean, the message it would send out would it's just a non-starter. And Notts County aren't daft. You know, they're not gonna sort of sanction a transfer of one of the player who is a fan's favourite, by the way, and the fans adore him, to the team they're trying to chase down for promotion, and who's one of their nearest rivals in terms of geography. I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Do I think Chesterfield were maybe a bit of rabble-rousing, trying to unsettle the ship? Maybe. But I've heard on the grapevine that a lot of teams are looking at Shimanga, and he played very well against Chelsea at the weekend. So maybe, and I've heard rumours that he could be on his way later this month, because there are a lot. I know Blackburn have watched him a few times. So I'm very interested to see how it plays out. I mean, we're all sort of fearing Notts losing players, but I think there are a lot of good players in this league who could quite easily move up to the EFL, League 2, League 1, possibly even Championship. There are some fantastic players here in the National League. So I'm really interested to see how it develops. Because I did hear a rumour that Chesterfield were looking at Harry Card while he was at Chorley, and he was obviously at Stockport under Simon Rusk. And I think he did quite well. I'm not sure whether that's materialised into anything, but that would suggest that, you know, if they're looking at strikers, and let's not forget they've got Asante coming back, they've got Danny Rowe, and they've got Shimanga. Why would you need another one? Unless you really want to give yourself a headache, because they'll be banging on the manager's door if they're not playing. So I think it's going to be a really interesting month. But as far as Notts are concerned, yes, Chesterfield did put a bid in. Chesterfield were rightly put in their place quite quickly by Notts to say, yeah, that ain't happening. So it would be interesting if a Football League club came in for him, because I don't think, if it was for the appropriate money, then I think Notts would sanction it. But like I say, and as what the owners said, it would have to significantly benefit the ambitions of the football club.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I think is interesting, because you already seem to have some apologists among some sections of our fan base that say you can't blame the owners, that this model of they're going to buy players, improve them and sell them on. Now, I'm racking my brains. I can never see directly those comments attributed to Alexander and Christoph Reitz. So I think this thing about Notts being a selling club is a complete misnomer, because there's no evidence that the club will be a selling club. And I would say you can't be a selling club in the National League and be sustainable, because I don't think the model works. For any level of sustainability with Notts, A, it ain't going to happen. But B, you've got to be getting incomes as a Football League club, because then the value of your football club goes up in terms of if and when you were looking to sell. And your revenue streams are significantly higher in the Football League through centralised sponsorship deals and incomes and all the rest of it. So when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about modelling, it is infinitely better to be a Football League club than a National League club. I'm sorry, that is a fact, and I'm going to pull rank on a lot of fans here that think they know what they're doing. Notts County cannot be sustainable with the size of the infrastructure of this club in the National League. So I see no evidence that the club are looking to sell these players. Not sold one yet, not offloaded one now. And how do you balance out when your objective is to get promoted back to the Football League, that you will countenance selling some of your crown jewels halfway through a season when you're building momentum and getting ready for the final push. Because I'll tell you one thing, whoever gets promoted this year, I stand to be corrected if Boreham would do this, by the way, I'll guarantee you they strengthen in this window, not weaken in this window. And if Notts offload Kel Roberts, or they offload Ruben Rodriguez, or they allow Kyle Wootton to go, then I'd say they've weakened it, unless they have got a ready-made replacement. And where, Kyle Wootton leaves, but we've done a deal to sign Shimanga from Chesterfield, you might think. But even then, that doesn't necessarily strengthen you, because you've got a group of players that would appear to have a good camaraderie, that are pulling together, and results at this moment in time are improving. And I think Mark Stallard's always good with the stats. Our last 10 games, it is title winning form. The first 10 weren't. Yeah. Our last 10 is title winning form. So I'm not sure anybody's going anywhere, to be honest with you. And let's be honest, you say it would take an astronomical sum or whatever for Kel Roberts. Well, why would you pay a big sum for Kel Roberts now, when Kel isn't playing as well as he was 12 months ago? Now, Kel comes good second half of the season. Kel's goals get you into the Football League. You hope you then don't need to sell anyway, because you're a Football League club. But surely his value would have gone up anyway.
I think we may be having a different conversation depending on what happens this season. I think if Notts don't go up,
I agree then. But
then I do think, but I do think then that I could genuinely see a few players leaving, just purely because they would have had good seasons, have been in the playoffs again. There's a lot of speculation. I think maybe even the players themselves then might look at it and go, is it time for me to move on and move into the Football League? I think I said this before. I think this is why it's such an important season in that respect, because there are a few players here, like your Carl Wootton's, for instance, who's been here 3 years now, and he would have been involved in. He's been involved in 3 promotion chases. This is the year, really, that you would hope that Notts can finally crack it and get back into the Football League. Because if not, I can see a few players might get a little bit twitchy. But right now, and it's a fantastic group of players, by the way. It's probably got one of the best spirits I've seen in the sort of 8 years that I've been covering Notts. It's a really good, tight-knit group, full of talent. Got a very, very astute and very talented coach leading them. They're playing some terrific football. So why would you want to, if you're a player, why would you want to leave that now smack bang in the middle of the season when you could achieve great things at a club where you would be, you'd write yourself into the history books as a legend for getting Notts out of this league. So from a player's perspective, I can't understand for the life of me why you'd want to leave now, unless it's a move that you're A, is going to take you into the Football League, and B, you're going to get weighed in financially. Maybe a bit of a different conversation if Wrexham or somebody come in and lay huge sums of money on the table. I think that might have to be a different conversation. But even then, I don't think Notts certainly wouldn't sell any of their better players to any other National League club. So I don't think there will be any exits in January. It touches wood, unless some Football League club comes in and slaps some big money on the table. But even then, it would have to be, Notts would have to be well prepared for that in terms of identifying replacements and doing so well in advance before any sort of deal comes off. But I know you say, why would you sell somebody for a huge sum when you're going for promotion? I remember when, it's funny enough, I was doing a bit for Villa this week for the Birmingham Mail, and obviously they've signed Coutinho. Liverpool sold Coutinho for 142 million. Everyone thought the world had ended. They went and spent that money on a goalkeeper and a centre half, and they won the league title within 2 years. I
think the key point there is within 2 years, right?
Yeah.
For me, 100% focus, 100% objective. We had Frank Vincent on the show doing a great one-on-one podcast, and I don't want to use his own words to put the players under pressure. He said, if we don't go up this season, it's a failure. So as much as I'm very encouraged by the way and the manner that we're playing, the objective is getting promotion. Okay. And if we do it, big tick in the box. And those players will get wage rises. The manager will get a wage rise. If we don't go up, all this counts for nothing. Because I do agree with your point there that in the summer, if we're still in the National League, there are big decisions to be taken. And the natural evolution of these things is, I would agree with you, you'll lose your better players. If we think back to Notts in the 90s under Neil Warnock, Mark Draper, Tommy Johnson came into the team at 17, got promoted from the 3rd tier to the 2nd tier. Craig Short came along as well. We got back-to-back promotions. If either of those 2 seasons had not ended in promotion, those players would have left and not ended up playing for Notts County in the top flight. A, they would have left, and B, Notts then would have, in all probability, not got into the top flight. So, if you were, for me, the only chance you've got of seeing Kel Roberts, Ruben Rodriguez, and Kyle Wotton in a Notts County shirt in August, the only chance is if we're back in the Football League. Thoughts?
But yeah, I mean, that's why it's such an important season. I've said that before, because you've got Carl coming out of contract in the summer. I think he's probably going to hit 20 goals long before the season ends. And if you look at his goals per game ratio, I'm sure his agent, and if he is an astute agent, he would already be in his ear saying, look, just keep on doing what you're doing. Hold off any talks about your contract at the moment, because if you hit 20 goals and you're still in the National League and you've had a fantastic season, you are going to have the pick of most clubs. And we've seen that Portsmouth, I mean, Danny Cowley's been very coy about it, didn't rule it out, never admitted it either, chose his words very carefully. But Portsmouth, a lot of teams will be looking at him because he'll be on a free transfer. So there's no big fee that they're going to have to pay. It would just be whether they can meet his wage demands. And so that already, for me, if I'm an outsider looking in and I'm not associated with Notts County, that looks a very attractive transfer already. You've got somebody there who will probably end the season having scored 60 goals in 3 seasons, which is a phenomenal return, really, and has the potential to get better and better. And he is getting better and better. The work that Ian's done with him on the training pitch this year about in terms of being more alive in the box and gambling has got him in red hot form. So again, that for me, if I'm a rival manager, it's a no-brainer. And maybe these teams are already having a word with his agent, because that's how football works. Ruben Rodriguez, again, Rotherham, I know they're definitely interested in him. Came to watch him against Rochdale.
Looking a good bet to go up, by the way, at the minute, aren't they? They're well placed.
Yeah, well placed. Is Ruben a championship player? I certainly think he can go as far as he wants. But I just think, those players who I've spoken about, I think that this is why this season is so important to get out of this league, because, okay, you can lose one. Maybe we may have to accept that we lose Carl Wotton. I think that's my gut feeling. I think we're probably going to have to accept that. Because of his goals per game ratio. And I think when it comes to contract negotiations, he will have a lot of interest, purely because he's on a free transfer. And again, great centre forward, good with his back to goal, can go in behind. I think for those ones who will still be under contract might be a little bit difficult, but that's another 6 months further down the line. Notts would then have a decision to make as to whether to cash in and use that money to reinvest and rebuild the squad. But in saying that, we have to bear in mind how many League Two teams can afford the kind of transfer fee, or League One teams the kind of transfer fee that you would expect for a player of Roberts' calibre or Rodriguez's calibre. Or Carl Cameron, for instance, who's been absolutely phenomenal this season. how many teams realistically could in that league, in League Two or League One, could afford 200 grand, 250 grand here? I don't think there'd be many. And then it comes down to, are those teams who can afford it, are they interested in the first place? So I think, but I do think this year really is the league that Notts have to get out of it. Really, I think if they want to keep this team together. But I'd have to say, I think the players, the transfer business that they've done, Cameron, Joel Taylor, another fantastic player. Frank Vincent's come in, done brilliant. Zach Brunt, Matt Palmer, I think is probably my player of the year so far. I think he is 100 times better than the National League. I still can't quite believe how he is playing in non-league. I think he's a League One footballer by a country mile. So I think they've done remarkably well in terms of the recruitment and buying these players. But I think, we've got to see now that the club takes that next step and finally gets back into the Football League, because I think if they can do that, then this team will grow together, it will evolve together, and it will be a fantastic. It's already a fantastic team to watch, but the longer they are together, the more they train together, there'll be a phenomenal team in about. They're already very good, but I think another year together, they will be, they'll be sensational.
On that positive note, let's end it for tonight. 76 minutes. We will be watching social media tomorrow, won't we? From 11 o'clock onwards, to see whether we will be heading off to Kings Lynn in the afternoon. You are down to make the trip, Leigh?
Yes, I shall be going. Yeah, I'm going down on the river, so I'm taking a boat.
Someone sent me a little thing of an HMS Magpie, some like little small, I don't know what you call it, Coast Guard type thing, sailing around on Kings Lynn's pitch. I do believe common sense has prevailed tomorrow, and I think that kind of is the yardstick by which you would hope moving forward the National League would bring in systems in place to ensure that happens for every game, to avoid inconveniencing fans. I'll tell you one thing, because several people have been asking that, and he's actually one of our Magpie Circle portfolio of sponsored players. Lewis Knight, bit of the forgotten man, had big problems with the hamstring, didn't he? I remember him breaking down after coming back in the pre-season game at Boston. Is he getting close now, Leigh, or is he still a way off?
It's a really good question, because I've been out of the loop a fair bit with everything that's happened over the last month. I will ask that question tomorrow night after the game. Promise. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Leigh, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. The very sad news this evening, when we've been broadcasting on Monday evening, is that shortly before we went on air, Colin Slater, Mr. Notts County, 5-6 decades of covering Notts County, passed away earlier this evening at the age of 87. All our thoughts and prayers for Colin, his family, and all his friends. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we leave with our thoughts with Colin Slater.